All right, what's up? Peace, y'all. You already know it's Jay Dizzle, Liberation Minded Media, Black I Stand Radio. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you check out Black I Stand Radio on Blog Talk. Check out everything in the link, in the description link. So as you can read by the description link of this video, what I'm going to do right here is I want to break down the interview with Charlamagne Tha God and Angela Rye when they were speaking about Farrakhan. I just want to break down that part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play some audio, because I don't want YouTube to start tripping. I'm going to play some audio, and I want to break down my sentiments and my understanding of it, and why I think that Angela Rye will come under attack by the media by the year end. Now, let me do it like this, man, because let me just be honest and let me just keep it real. I do actually owe an apology. It's not like, let me do a share screen real quick. Even though I know it's not likely Angela Rye will see this. However, because we are from the same section, we're from the same neighborhood, and my family does know her father, it's possible she might see this, or that I might have the opportunity to actually meet her at some point. So let me start off by doing like this, just to keep it real. This is a post that I made a couple of days ago, and I made a prediction, and it says, "House Negroes who white society will turn against this year, Angela Rye and Money Mayweather." Feel free to add to the list, and people's add to the list. And actually, a couple of people came to the defense of Angela Rye. Now, just to tell you the truth, I've watched some interviews of her, and I thought she was dope. Then what I did, which I advise anyone not to do, is I heard somebody else's presentation and representation of her, and I took that without actually taking proper context or having the diligence to actually look at what she said for herself. So even though I don't agree with what she said, I do have to retract the label of House Negro as referring to Angela Rye, because I actually believe she's very sincere. I actually believe she is about the people. She's a beautiful sister. She's from Seattle. I got to give it up to her. You know what I'm saying? She's doing her thing. She's representing. We need that. I only recently became aware of who she was, or who she is. I'm going to read her bio. I'm going to go into her bio and all that before we start breaking down some of this audio. So let me just say off top, if you do happen to see this, sis, or anybody who sees this who may have seen the reference, and it's not too many people, because, you know, I'm just saying, though, I do have to retract that, because it wasn't right. I don't believe her to be a house nigga. I believe that she has different ways of looking at things. And because of that, excuse me 1 second. This is an important call. Let me just pause it real quick. Let me meet this out. All right, excuse me, y'all. So like I said, you know, we do have a difference of opinion. However, I couldn't call her a house Negro. I can't do that in good conscience, because I don't believe her to be that. But I do want to explain why, after I show her bio and some of these things, I do want to show why I do believe they'll still come at her, despite the fact that she kind of threw Farrakhan under the bus. even though she did throw Farrakhan on the bus, in my opinion, and she kind of did take a safe route, which I don't know if I should call it safe or I should just call it her sincere opinion, which I believe it to be. However, I still believe in the spirit of the same way they came after Mark Lamont Hill, they will come after her, and I'm gonna explain to you why. So first, let me go by checking out her bio. So I went to her actual page, right? So here's her actual page. And the reason I'm not going to get the bio from here is because it was kind of loading slow. So I don't want to give any shade to her website, but it was kind of running slow, so I couldn't really work with it. As you can see right here, I liked this page at some point. So, you know, it's not no hate. But let me go to her bio real quick, as told by Wikipedia. For what it's worth, we know Wikipedia is not 100% accurate. You can't use it to source college papers, for instance, but you know, there is a decent amount of accuracy to it. So Angela Rye was born October 26, 1979, is an American attorney and the principal and CEO of Impact Strategies, a political advocacy firm in Washington, D.C. She is a liberal political commentator on CNN and an NPR political analyst. She served as executive director and general counsel to the Congressional Black Caucus for the 112th Congress. She currently is running the boards of the Congressional Black Caucus Institute, Congressional Black Caucus Political Action Committee, Seattle University School of Law alumni, and Women in Entertainment Empowerment Network. She serves as a senior advisor to the Government Technology and Services Coalition and is a member of Links Incorporated. That's pretty damn impressive. That is pretty dope. That is somebody who I would love to build with on some of the things I'm doing with the STEM program, with the Youth Empowerment Solutions and all that. So, let me see here. Rye grew up in Madrona, a section of Seattle, Washington. That's the Central District. That's where I'm from. She graduated from Seattle's all-girl Holy Names Academy, the University of Washington, Seattle University School of Law. Her father is Seattle community activist Eddie Rye Jr. Like I said, you know, Seattle, it's a small, you know, it's a small city, even though it's spread out. So, you know, different activists are going to know each other or know of each other and connect at some point because, you know, those of us who are Black who are doing the work are going to more likely in some way or another be aware of each other or come into each other's company. I'm not going to read the rest of this. Now, let me go ahead and go to this right here. So now let me go ahead and play some of this interview and let me break it down, you know, saying the best I can.
The ban that Facebook did on some figures in our community, Alex Jones.
First of all, what you're not going to say is that Alex Jones is a figure in our community.
Well, not our community.
Okay.
But just society, I guess. Right. I don't freaking know. The media figure in society.
To the biggest, a figure in the biggest.
Yeah. Alex Jones, Milo Yiannopoulos, there's some other names too. But the biggest one that stands out for me is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
Yeah.
What do you think of that form of censorship?
This is really hard for me. And the reason it is hard for me is because if you ask me, and this is a point where I didn't fight with him verbally, but sparring in my mind with Killer Mike, who has been speaking out against the problems with censorship. And to me, I feel like there's a difference between censorship of people who are saying things I don't like and censorship of people who have the types of hate speech that incite violence. That's a different kind of thing. So in my mind, I can justify a ban on Alex Jones and InfoWars and Milo. It's been harder for me with Louis Farrakhan. And what I had to do yesterday, my mom has told me all my life that the most important skill I can gain in life is perspective taking. And this one's been hard. I've been mad about the thing with Louis Farrakhan all weekend. And I was like, let me go back and listen to some of the stuff that people are the most upset about. So I went to his Twitter page, because that is still up. His Twitter page, and he has a pinned tweet up that talks about that Jesus on the cross wasn't real and all this stuff. Like, I mean, it was inflammatory, and blames, you know, Jesus's death on the Jews in ways that I think are not very productive.
All right, hold on. Let me just say this real quick. Let me backtrack real quick. Okay, now the beginning of this interview, now she's a Christian, she's a spiritual person, you know what I'm saying? You know, so some of that is going to weigh into, you have to weigh some of that into her perspective, you know. So, you know, because she came, if you've seen this interview, she started off with some of that, her and Charlamagne. So, you know, she lets it be known with her stance on, you know, religion or spirituality, or, you know, the perspective she's coming from, which is all fair. It's all good. That's, you know what I'm saying? Everybody has to be grounded in something. However, I do believe that when it comes to when people put their religious lens on and view everything from that, not saying that she does that necessarily, but in this case, I believe she is. So when you have that religious or spiritual lens on when you're looking at certain things, which is fair with Farrakhan, seeing that he comes from a religious perspective, but sometimes that will cause a clash, and you could be subjective to having a certain kind of view. And then, like I said, this is a beautiful sister. I believe she's brilliant. I believe she's sincere. I'm so proud of what she's been able to do. I'm glad that she's out there representing. I hope she continues to represent for the people. However, like I said, you know, when you have a religious lens, it can kind of taint or obstruct how you feel about things, because it's harder to see it objectively. So when she says that he blames the Jews for the death of Jesus, well, that's fair to say. However, it's also fair to conclude that that's exactly what happened if you're going to take the biblical Christian judo perspective. If you take that perspective, that's exactly what happened. So for him to mention that and say that, there's a strategy behind that, but it's also truth according to the perspective that we get from the Bible. So that's what I'll say first of all, and then let me get back to this.
What I wish, if I could have a conversation with the minister, it would be that he needs to show up consistent. And by that, I mean, live out his authentic truth in a way that empowers, that has traditionally empowered Black people, but does not take away power from other communities.
Okay, so let me just, I have to say something about that. The minister has been very, very consistent. And seeing that he is rooted in Garveyism at the core, because Elijah was a Garveyite, and because pretty much any form of Black nationalism is rooted in Garvey, he does speak a truth that will empower. Now, does that mean that he doesn't offend some people with his rhetoric? Of course he does. However, we have to learn how to accept even the fallacies, if we want to call it that, or the harshness that may offend others, if it's true. If it's true, or if it's not in hate. And no one can really say that what he says is in hate. So we have to be able to do these things because everybody else does. In other words, people, let's look at Donald Trump, for instance. You might think this is an extreme comparison, but let's look at it. There's a lot of people who support Donald Trump because of what they feel he can contribute to America, whether it's economics, you know what I'm saying, whatever it is, that don't approve of his antics as far as grabbing by the block, or some of the things that he says that ramps up and may be seen as divisive. But they can support him due to the principles of how they feel this country needs to go, move in a better direction. Now, whether we agree that's the case or not isn't the point. The point is, as a people, generally speaking, sometimes we get superficial with who we support or what principles we want to support based upon a character flaw or something that we don't agree with that's really not even tangible to the underlining message or movement.
When that power is not rooted in racism, bigotry, or overpowering other communities. Right now.
And hold on, one more thing. And it's not really possible that, you know, Farrakhan can overpower other communities. You know, I mean, you can see that he doesn't have the power to stay on Facebook. They took him off. So that community that controls Facebook has the power to take him off. He doesn't have the power to take them off of any type of platform. So it's not like he can impose his power on other communities. And it's not even a tactic that is used by Black nationalists, that's used by the Nation of Islam or Farrakhan.
We need leadership that will heal and unite us, not on falsehoods, but in reality. So ground us in the truth about what happened at the slave trade. Ground us in the truth about what's happened historically with Black folks and Jewish folks and why there's dissension and discord.
Okay, I gotta stop it right there again, y'all. Okay, because and like I said, I believe that she's sincere. I believe that she may not be educated in certain realms, which is fine, because for her mission and what she's doing, it may not be necessary. For her mission and what she's doing, it may be more strategic and effective for her to take the route she's taken and not be as educated in some of these nuances that Farrakhan or other people are. So although I do believe that there is a degree of knowledge and information and awareness that she will attain as she grows and develops in her activism and in her knowledge, and it will probably become a little bit more clearer down the line. But we do have to say this. You know, if she says that Farrakhan should be grounded in the truth of the relationship, well, this is actually why they attacked him, because of his being grounded in the truth. So when you read the secret relationships between Blacks and Jews, what you'll find is, by their own admission, they have pretty much controlled the slave trade. That is the relationship. That is the truth of the dynamic between Black people and Jews. Not all Jews, but the ones that do have a significant amount of power and influence. Yes, they did control the slave trade. Those ships were not government ships. Those were private ships. Those markets, slave markets, these were ran by majority Jewish enterprisers. In fact, despite only 30% of Protestant Southerners owning slaves in the South, 75% of Jewish. So this is, you know, I have Jewish people that I know personally. They will not dispute this. They will even admit that, look, the Zionists and this kind of, you know, saying some of these people that are in power do not represent all of us. And yes, they will also acknowledge the fact that, you know, there's a lot of shenanigans in the name of Jewishness that doesn't really represent them. So all I'm really saying is what he's saying is grounded in truth. You have to learn that so you can understand that. Even if you don't agree with him speaking these things publicly or whatever, it is grounded in the truth. What happens is, because the media is owned by most of these Jewish people, you know what I'm saying, as she indicates later in this interview, you know, there's certain triggers or certain things that they may want to protect, or they may want to not focus on, because it's not going to make them in a good light. So rather sinister purpose or not. But the truth is, what Farrakhan speaks is grounded, and he always makes a distinction between those wicked people who happen to practice Judaism versus those who are virtuous and really do seek righteousness.
Don't like feed into that. Even him saying something like, I'm not anti-Semite, I'm anti-termite. Mm-hmm. That's inflammatory. You know, why are you saying that? Just stop. You are the person who created the Million Man March. Mm-hmm. Walk in that truth, walk in that power. That's power. We've not been able to do that since then. Mm-hmm. So my plea to him would be like, yo, you mean so much to us. Don't trick off your legacy with nonsense, with bullshit.
Okay, so I mean, let's just keep it real. That was kind of inflammatory and disrespectful. Kind of was. I mean, to imply that he's tricking it off. Now, here's what I will say. And Charlamagne, they speak about this a little bit later, so I'll let it run. But let's keep in mind, Farrakhan is 80 plus years old. He's been doing this for 60 years. There's certain things that older generation and older people, they're just going to be how they are. It's not likely that they're really going to change. What we do is we see the substance of what he has produced, and we appreciate that. And if a new generation feels like curving or using different strategies or methodologies, but based in the same principles to obtain certain things, that's fine. Or if you just have a different way of going about it, that's fine too. However, we must stay on code, similar to how other people stay on code, because as much inflammatory things other groups say sometimes about us, they're not typically thrown under the bus unless it compromises their money, really. Then they'll throw each other under the bus. So, you know, a company or something might apologize or fire one of their employees when they see that it might have a detriment to their economics. So I feel like we should stay on code in that regards too. So even if we don't agree on certain things, there's certain things, and I'm glad she said this in an interview to Charlamagne instead of saying this on Fox News. You know what I'm saying? So I'll tell you the truth. So Rizza Islam did make a video where he was kind of going in on her, and that's where I really got the rhetoric or the, you know, the perspective of her being a house nigga, which I now retract. I do disagree with what Rizza Islam said when he said that he believes that she has handlers and that they were putting this information in her head, and the Jews and the Zionists and these different writers for these different media outlets was making us. I don't believe that's the case. I believe she's really speaking from her heart, even if she's not as educated as Rizza Islam on some of these things. But I believe she is speaking from her heart, though.
Because that's what it is. Like, and it really hurts because I'm like, man, I can't defend the stuff that you're saying on these clips. I can't. I don't care if you tell me it's taken out of context. If I were in that same position and somebody said, I'm not I'm trying to figure out. I'm not anti-nigga, I'm anti-figure. Like, I can't support that. Like, I'm just not going to be able to support that. I have people in my life who I care deeply about who are Jewish and have ancestors who were tremendously impacted by the Holocaust. We're not going to trick that off and say that that's like, you know, a conspiracy theory. Like, stop. You know, like, don't act like Donald Trump, especially when you don't have the power of Donald Trump. Like, it's not doing anything but making people create false equivalencies. But I can't justify some of the stuff he said.
All right, let me just say this real quick about the anti-termite, because, you know, it is what it is, and it was shade. Let's just keep it real. That was straight shade. I'm not anti-Semite, I'm anti-termite. It was straight shade, but if you really look at it in context of what he was saying he's not anti-Semite. In fact, so he's saying that I'm not anti people who practice Judaism. I'm anti those who destroy the foundation of civilization, similar to how termites destroy the foundation of a house, meaning those who are destructive, those who are eating away, blood sucking, he's against them. So if people got offended by that, then they must kind of, they must akin themselves to those who are destructive to society. You know what I'm saying? But I do understand why that, you know, could be seen as offensive and why people would take it that way, though. But the way I see it is, look, it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? He's going to be he's on that hard line. He's walking that hard line, and he's going to speak his truth. Some of the things that we disagree on are so small or superficial in the big picture that it's not really even worth wasting time to disagree with in a way that may undermine the message.
Totally understand. I've listened to a lot of Minister Farrakhan throughout my life because that's my father's big on the nation. So he always would give me message to the black man by Elijah Muhammad, always would give me autobiography of Malcolm X.
I like to hear Khalid Muhammad speak. Like, you know, like back in the day, like I get it.
I've been to the Million More movement. I've been building with the minister since 2005. The thing I say about the minister is if you listen to him a lot, he's not attacking all Jewish people. Just like he doesn't attack all black people. He also says a lot of stuff that's like homophobic. Like a lot of stuff. Well, I think a lot of that is old school, just being an older 80-something-year-old black man.
I guess my thing is being old doesn't mean that you can be like dumb and a bigot. You know, I'm not calling him dumb, but I'm saying you don't have to speak ignorantly because you're old.
But he got his beliefs though. And if you're anybody that deals with religious doctrine, if you deal with the Bible, if you deal with the Quran, both of those books talk about homosexuality in a way that's not flattering. So if those guys are really, I don't knock anybody when it comes to their religion.
But it's the way that he talks about it, right? Like I remember there were preachers back in the day that would be like, God made Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. That rhetoric has really slowed down. People know now that that's hateful. It's not a way that you reach people or get people to feel like they can be embraced by your religious beliefs. He's not slowing down. He's talking about Hollywood making men women and women men. Like that's not helpful.
All right, so I gotta go in on the LGBT and in my opinions on that. I have to. Okay, first of all, as someone who's grounded in Christianity as she is, and anyone else who claims these different monotheistic religions, Islam, Judaism, or Christianity, that book is very harsh against homosexual activities and lifestyle. It just is. So if that's your foundation, which the Quran and Bible is his foundation, you would expect that he is going to be against that lifestyle, even if not being against the actual people. In other words, condemning the act and not the person. You know what I mean? So what happens in today's society is anything that's critical of the LGBT is seen as hate or homophobic, even if it's not, because he's never said they should suffer because of their homosexuality. They should be killed. He never said that they should have a lesser standard of living or anything like that. What happens is, especially with Black people, is because they have been painted as an oppressed group. But I challenge you to find any evidence supporting that they are oppressed. But because they have been painted as an oppressed group, it pulls on our heartstrings, especially our women, because they don't want to see people that they feel is being oppressed, especially with the history that we come from. However, when you look at it from a straight, objective, political agenda and political point of view and a Black nationalist point of view, then you have to speak against it, or at least you have to be aware of the agenda behind it. And I'll tell you why. And I'll tell you why, especially why Black women should be very careful and leery about supporting LGBT community. And I'm gonna tell you why. And this is something I've stated before. First of all, the pedosexual movement is starting to be normalized because of the normalization of LGBT. That's just a fact. And I know that some individual gay people may speak up against the pedophiles trying to join the movement, but as a movement, they haven't condemned it. They're starting to put the P in LGBT. Because remember, at first it was just gay and lesbian, then they added this, bisexual, then they added transgender, now they're adding queer, now soon they're gonna add the P for pedosexual, meaning that they're trying to normalize that as just a sexual orientation. So we do have to be leery of that because of that. And let me go even ahead of that or behind that. We have to remember that this is not like a grassroots movement. This wasn't a movement because gay people were being discriminated from getting jobs, or they were being discriminated by the police, or people calling the police on gay people, or they're getting shot down and beat up. That's not how this movement moved. You have to read the Gay Manifesto by Michael Swift, written in 1987. Then you can kind of see why it's an agenda from the top down. Now let me move to another reason why it's dangerous for us to ignore it and to cape for the agenda of it, not for the people. They deserve their rights, but they have the rights that they want. But now let's move to another segment of why this is dangerous. I stated a few years ago that with the normalization of LGBT, because of who actually leads the movement, not the face of the movement, but because who actually leads the movement, being homosexual white men, and because their disposition of women is apathetic or not really holding high regards to the well-being of women, I said that there will be a blurring of the line of what is rape. Now, if you follow what happened in North Carolina, maybe a month or so ago, where advocates tried to remove laws off of the book that protected rapists. They shot it down without a vote in North Carolina recently. In other words, what they're saying is if a woman gets high or drunk, she cannot refuse consent. So in essence, if you were to sit in a bar, sit in a party and watch a woman get tossed up out of her mind and take advantage of her, she can't say she didn't consent. Not only that, so in other words, that rape would be consensual rape, if there's such a word. Not only that, the law also states that once consent is given, it can't be taken back. In other words, if a woman consents and you guys are getting it in and he decides to do some extra shit that you ain't down with, you've already given the consent. So therefore, it's not rape. So these are the kind of things that, because of the way that this movement is being agenda oriented, because of that, it's starting to tear down certain things, and it's going to actually be more risky for Black women in particular, but also for children as well. So that's to say that it's understandable if you feel like gay people aren't getting are being treated a certain way. But first of all, you have to prove that, because it's just not the case. Second of all, we still have to understand that the usurping of civil rights, as we've seen with the 1964 Equality Act, saying these are things that we have to really look at from a non-emotional perspective and from strictly a political nationalist perspective, and what that means to us as a community, that now LGBT is part of the Equality Act, meaning that now they're going to have a lot of leverage when it comes to things that should be exclusively for civil rights, including reparations. Let's go.
Or constructive.
Listen, I understand. But
I'm frustrated by it, because I do respect a lot of what he's done for the community. There are brothers who I know who were incarcerated, got out, and turned their whole lives around from being a part of the nation. The FOI, the way that they've protected people in our community, folks right now, who need that protection and support. I don't want him to be grouped in with these hate-filled.
Oh, I agree. That I hate.
mean?
Yeah.
But I can't. When people are like, "Well, what about this?" I can't justify that. In fact, I'm sorry. I don't even understand that.
I've asked the minister several times, on record, off record, is he anti-Semitic? And it's always the same thing. He talks about good Jewish people and he talks about bad Jewish people. Just like he talks about good black people and he talks about bad black people. I say it all the time. The minister's harder on black people than he is on anybody.
I agree with that.
But when it comes to the statements that you don't agree with, that's fine. There's plenty of people that we, deal with on a daily basis who we don't agree with everything that they're saying. And I don't like when we hold Minister Farrakhan to a different standard than we hold our president to.
I agree with that. He should be off social media.
Joe Biden has said things that I think are downright racist, period, when it comes to black people. Joe Biden has said things in regard, he wrote the 94 crime bill, but guess what? That don't mean I'm not gonna vote for him. So if I can look at somebody like Joe Biden and say, I disagree with what he said here, what he said there, what he said there, but still say, you know what? But I'll vote for him because of all the other things that he may bring to the table that are good for us.
Joe Biden said the N-word and refused to apologize for it.
I haven't heard Joe Biden apologize for nothing.
But that partially is not true.
Okay.
He said that he wishes he would have handled the Anita Hill thing differently.
He said that 2 weeks ago when he announced he was running for president.
That is true. I'm just saying, let's just acknowledge for what it is. All I'm saying is, ultimately, what would mean more to me than anything else is the minister saying, there are things that I've said in my past that even out of context, in context or out of context, they shouldn't have been said. They're just not necessary.
Okay, so right here we gotta address this. We gotta address this right here. Now, having a difference of opinion on Farrakhan is totally acceptable. Critique is totally acceptable, especially because she does have a contribution to the community that is value. That adds great value. But when you can make excuses for Joe Biden, but you're not willing to take that same approach to your own, that's problematic. And because Joe Biden has done things that has been destructive. He has backed things and said things that have been destructive towards our community, and greatly destructive to our community. Farrakhan hasn't. And he also hasn't said things that created detriment or destruction to other communities. So I have to agree with Charlamagne here that if he could look past some of the things that Joe Biden has said and did to see the greater cause of maybe him being a better candidate than a Trump or somebody else, we have to be able to do the same thing. So let's not make excuses for Biden and then hold Farrakhan to a higher standard, because Biden's actually running for president.
Necessary. How is it moving they're just salacious, you don't need to say anything about termites and you just don't need to.
Well, see, I think the worst thing that has happened to the minister in a lot of ways, the worst and best thing is social media.
Yeah.
Because you take these little clips.
I know.
You sound bites.
We have all been impacted by that.
100%. Yeah. We take these sound bites, or you take this one tweet and you're like, what does he mean by that? You know what I mean?
And so the thing to me, you should look at that. But you should look at where he
Put my lipstick on.
That's not, you got lipstick?
It's chapstick.
You said I'm putting my lipstick on too. That was Ashley right here. But
mine too. I felt it right here in the corner.
That's what I'm gonna tell you. Next time you post it, I'm gonna say the corner of your lip is ashy.
It's such a
that's what I was gonna say. Sorry. So my thing is, we can't make it seem like this is just something that we disagree with. Some of it is really hateful.
I think what Joe Biden says is hateful. When you say that Barack Obama is the first mainstream African-American that you've met that is bright, articulate, and clean, what you saying, all the rest of us is dirty? The rest of us not bright? The rest of us not articulate? And he said that in 2008.
Yeah, I think that he didn't mean it that way.
That's hateful.
And I don't.
See, I gotta say this, sis. Come on now. We can't act like we can pardon a Biden, excuse him for what he's saying, make it, add words to him and how we felt about it. And no, I don't think he really meant that, but then we can't take that same line. Now, listen, I understand her position, being a contributor in CNN and other mainstream medias. And I understand that she even is just going to have a whole different way of looking at things, a whole different methodology, a whole different road to travel for what she's trying to do. And I respect that. However, because of that, see, I don't want to get into that yet, but I'll just say this though. Like we if we can make excuses for other people, and if we can minimize what they have done that's been offensive, we have to be able to take the same road. I know that it sounds like you're being biased if you do that because he's the minister or because he's black and you're black. However, that's okay. It's 2019. It is okay to be biased for your people. It's okay. It's not okay to necessarily hate other people. It's not okay to want the detriment of other people unless those people are directly in the way of your liberation and justice. So I do understand that, sometimes it's a little easier to take the road where you look like you're being more objective than subjective, but it's 2019 and sometimes we just got to be straight subjective for our own.
I don't know. And I'm just saying, for somebody who I've worked around him enough to know that he regularly puts his foot in his mouth.
Joe Biden.
Yeah. And I don't think that it was mean-spirited at all. I think that some of the stuff the minister said has been kind of mean-spirited.
No, I think Joe Biden puts his foot in his mouth.
Jewish people, what?
I think Joe Biden puts his foot in his mouth because he's pretending to be something he's not. And when you're pretending to be something you're not,
I don't think that's what it is.
I think that's what it is. When you're pretending to be something you're not, you always got the facade on, but every now and then that veil falls.
The healthcare thing happened and he was excited and he told Barack Obama this is a big deal. And it was kind of in the mic.
What's wrong with that?
But I mean, it was not appropriate. I mean, now compared to the presidential standards, nothing at all. But I'm saying at the time, it was like, ooh, and there was a whole BFD joke.
You can't say fuck it?
No.
These candidates is cursing now. I love it. I see Mayor Pete saying shit.
Well, my point is times have changed. Anyway, if I could have my way, I would ask the minister to dial back some of that rhetoric because I don't believe he needs to be in the same category as Alex Jones and them.
We can't allow him to be because one thing that they historically do to our black prominent voices, our prominent.
I gotta say respect for that. Respect her for that one.
Black leaders is vilified.
But can we also make sure that there are things that can we not do things that are vilifiable?
See, the reason listen, I get it. I get everything that you're saying.
And I'm saying I really have wrestled with this all weekend. Like, okay, what are the things that they're saying that are legitimate? What are my issues? And my issues are like, are you really about to undermine your entire history because you want to be wedded to these points that aren't even relevant?
I don't think he is. Like, we're not going to let white people undermine history.
So can you just stop the other stuff, though?
We have to be very careful of that, too.
Okay.
When it comes to the media.
Okay.
Because this is the same media who used to call Martin Luther King Jr. the most dangerous man in the world.
No, but I'm saying, I think that it's different because if you look at what Dr. King said about Jewish people who were allies in the movement, I mean, the ministers even criticize the relationship that the NAACP has with the Jewish community.
Okay, we got to speak on this, and we got to speak on one more thing. All right, so let me see. Okay, so first let's speak on the relationship between the NAACP and the Jewish community. The Jewish community did start the NAACP. In fact, they did. Now, let's look at that in proper context of why and when they started NAACP, and the fact that they didn't even have a black chair until pretty recently, as long as NAACP has been around. Now, the NAACP was started around the same time as the UNIA. When the UNIA of Marcus Garvey started making a lot of grounds and started orienting people towards black nationalism, they put the soft movement of the NAACP in effect. So they created a black organization that they also controlled and still have control over, which is why the NAACP reluctantly, I don't know if it was reluctantly or not, but endorsed the LGBT and the Equality Act of 1964 only after being prompted by Jewish people who have power and influence in NAACP. So in other words, they subtly threatened to defund the NAACP as they mentioned that, hey, you guys aren't jumping on board with this LGBT. So then that's when the NAACP endorsed the LGBT being usurped or being counted as, a population protected by the Equality Act of 1964. That's when that happened. So, we have to just understand that. So I'm not saying that there's no contribution or value to the NAACP, but I will say that is something that moving forward, the generations now coming up after us, they're not going to deal with the NAACP. Let's keep it real. They're just not, because that's an old movement. They're not they're not pushing the line for saying at the same capacity as some of these other grassroots organizations. They've served their time. Saying it is what it is. And now, as far as the alliances with Jewish people, there are some Jewish people who are cool, who's really about justice, who really, not with the agenda of controlling and dividing and conquering. That does exist. In fact, in case people don't know, Farrakhan got a plaque, a cup with I forgot what it's called, like one of those little things that like royal people would drink from, one of those things like a Jesus type of piece, silver, that he was given by two Jewish rabbis who called him the Messiah. So what I want to say is this. The reason I'm saying it is this, because you have to understand, depending on who you're getting your message and your media and your information from, is going to be the perspective in which you're going to think a certain segment of people feels. However, there's a segment of people who don't really get on the news, even in the Jewish community. There are thousands of Jewish people. I've seen footage of Jewish people that are against the occupation of Palestine. You're not going to really see that on CNN and Fox. They're not going to show you that in the mainstream media. So you have to just be wary that you're only getting a certain perspective when we're dealing with this mainstream media, which is why I always push for our own platforms and for other independent platforms that will objectively tell certain stories. So I just had to say that.
I think what you said is true. He overgeneralizes.
Yes, like just stop.
That I agree with.
Just stop. It's not helpful.
Yeah.
In an era where there's an increasing divide between all these cultures, where if we really came together, we'd be more powerful. Just stop. That's all I'm saying. Can you just stop? And can you acknowledge that in the past you've overgeneralized? It's not helpful, and you're willing to take some of these stuff down.
Because I've heard him say, like Jewish people come to listen to the minister speak.
Yeah.
Like he talks about his Jewish allies, but he really does separate it when he says wicked Jewish people and good Jewish people. Same thing he does with black people.
But I guess here's my other thing. Also, can we at least acknowledge that there is a hyper focus on Jewish people and not just white supremacy writ large? He spends a lot of time talking about Jews, and I think it's in a way that scares. If we let's just acknowledge triggers. We talk about them all the time. There are certain things that we experience as black people because of traditions of slavery and how that's imprinted on our DNA. It's triggering for us. So for the Jewish community, I imagine, I'm not Jewish, but I'm just saying I could see this. Hearing somebody that's regularly honing in on you could feel like what happened with the Holocaust.
No, I agree with you. And I will say this. In the 60 plus years of Minister Farrakhan doing what he's doing, the sound bites they take are about Jewish people. That is not even nowhere near the totality of what he speaks on. But I will say, we as black people, white people, you can't tell somebody what to be offended by. So if Jewish people are saying this is anti-Semitic rhetoric, then you have to say, okay, this must be anti-Semitic rhetoric. Simple as that. Like, I can't tell Jewish people what to be offended by. So if Jewish people are offended by that rhetoric, I have no choice but to listen.
Yeah.
You know, but I do agree with you when you say that, you know, the minister, he makes it very hard for us. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, sometimes just to, but I look at the minister the same way I look at any of these people. If I can bypass everything Joe Biden's done and said to say I will still vote for him if he's in the the general election.
I think that I can do that, but I need him to acknowledge that some of the stuff he's said has been hurtful and it's not good.
Has Biden done that for black people?
I think he's tried. I think he's done that in some ways. I don't know if he's done it sufficiently.
Like I got like what he said on the Senate when he talked about he doesn't care about the system that created these predators. They'll kill your mom. They'll kill my mom. Yeah. People that look like me. People that look like you. Like,
if he hasn't apologized for that, he should. What else did he do? The school busing stuff. He said some really offensive stuff about school busing. He needs to apologize for all of it. This is not just about Louis Farrakhan needs to walk things back more than white people. Nah, I expect the same thing from everybody. But I'm saying, just like we know, we have to be twice as good. You know, work 3 times as hard and probably apologize 5 times as much. I want him to meet that standard. I do not want his credibility or history undermined because of some offhanded, salacious, off-the-cuff remarks that don't have anything to do with what he's trying to build.
Okay, I mean, that's fair. 100% disagree, but you know, that's fair if that's her opinion on it. But I don't feel like we should have to apologize 5 times as much. I think we have to change the climate. To change the climate to true equality means that we shouldn't have to work twice as hard to get the same. We shouldn't have to apologize 5 times as much just to be credible. We should not even be approaching it in 2019 with that same mind frame. I think that that's played out, and that we you know, there's a different way to approach it, and we could do that by empowering ourselves and by staying on code.
White people will undermine this history regardless.
But I'm saying, like, at least don't work with them on that. Like, just undo some of the stuff that's not necessary.
Don't work with them. I agree.
Anyway, if I could talk to him, that's what I would say.
What if he's not sorry?
Then I can't support it. Then I can't support it. I think it's bigotry.
No, you can't support it or just him and his hotel.
I cannot. I cannot. Thought Naja fell out the chair, Jeff. I cannot. In an instance where, like, the Bible talks about separating the wheat from the tares, where the wheat is not willing to separate itself from the tares, I can't be a part of that. I don't want that stuff in my spirit.
Do you love Malcolm X?
Yeah.
Same rhetoric.
He went to his pilgrimage and came back talking real different.
But if you read the autobiography of Malcolm X, he is things in there that could be considered anti-Semitic.
Sure, but I'm saying he had a change. Louis Farrakhan's pinned tweet. That means he was like, this is the best I got for y'all. Posted it up at the top is the thing I was telling you about Jesus.
Let me just, it's fair to say that Louis Farrakhan does not run his Twitter account. So somebody else probably pinned that. They might have got his permission to do so, but somebody else likely pinned that and works that account for him. You know, he's 80 years old. You know, a lot of people always act like they support Malcolm X, but let's just keep it real. Malcolm X stood for what he stood for, and the best of Malcolm X came from the Nation of Islam years. And yes, he did have a change of heart in certain things, but he pretty much stayed, you know, on the line. So, you know, my point is, look, we don't have to agree with everything, but we got to be able to stay on code. You know what I'm saying? And maybe everybody isn't everyone's cup of tea. Maybe he's Farrakhan, you know, for whatever reason, she doesn't agree with certain things. That's fair. That's 100% fair. However, we have to understand that the big picture is that if everybody was moving in that spirit, we would be a lot further. So if there's things you can take from that and use, and things you'd rather leave alone, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with voicing your opinion. There's nothing wrong with criticism either. I'm just suggesting that we're a little bit more careful. And I'm gonna also, in a minute, after we finish a couple more minutes of this, I'm gonna tell you why, despite the fact that it sounds like she may be caping for the movement against Farrakhan, I don't think she really is. But even though she is taking more of a safe route, which I believe is sincere, it's still going to put her in danger of mainstream media coming against her. And I'll explain that in a little bit.
You want to hear it?
Yeah, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah,
I gotta read it in context.
Let me play it. Hold on. Because I was like, oh man, this hurts my feelings. Because he talks about Jesus a lot.
He loves Jesus.
But did you know that he called himself the Messiah too?
Yeah.
Look at the definition of Messiah.
Okay, here it goes.
Y'all. It's not a
They
it's
haven't
not a
even
religious
verified him on Twitter.
definition.
Here
It's
goes
not a
the book.
religious word in proper context and definition.
God
Listen, you know,
so loved his people that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believed in him would not perish, but have everlasting life. God does not love this world. God never sent Jesus to die for this world. Jesus died because he was 2,000 years too soon to bring about the end of the civilization of the Jews. He never was on no cross. There was no Calvary for that Jesus. Early one Saturday morning, our Savior taught us, when he found out he was 2,000 years too soon to end the civilization of the Jews, he decided that he would give his life for the truth that he taught, that his name would live until the one that he prefigured came into existence. And that's why the Quran says Jesus and his mother Mary were a sign. Jesus didn't die on Calvary. He died in front of an old Jewish store that was boarded up. And the Roman soldiers came to get him.
Okay.
I don't even know what just happened.
Exactly. And I think that's my point, right? Like, this is his pinned tweet. This is the tweet that he said, this is representative of everything I want you all to know about me.
Yeah, I think the minister's way more than that. I wouldn't stand on that.
I understand that, but what I'm telling you is when we have a choice, Bernard, to put up what represents what we on right now, that's what your pinned tweet is. And for me, like, that was devastating for me as a Christian, right? It's also devastating for me. Like, why are you talking about ending the civilization of anybody? Like, that's what happened to us. That's what happened with colonization in all of these countries in Africa. That's what happened here. That's what white folks did to Native Americans here. Why are you talking about ending any civilizations? That broke my heart. You know, like, I'm like, I want to defend you. I want to say this man and the history of the Million Man March is powerful, but that is devastating.
Don't you start
crying. And he chose, no, I'm serious. It's like he chose that.
I get it.
Like, for what? It's so frustrating.
Nah, just get her some tissue.
All right, let me say this. You know, like I said, you know, she's coming from a particular perspective, Christianity. So, you know, she may look at it from a perspective that's going to be a little bit more subjective in some cases. You know, let's keep it real. You know, the information that he just spit about how Jesus was killed, it came from Jewish people. Those are Jewish sources where he got that information outside of the Bible, but accredited and, you know, acknowledged and accepted by Jewish people. Number one. Number two, you know, in the civilization, maybe that might have been a little bit harsh for some to take, but let's just keep it real. The end of our civilization brought forth this civilization right now, which is oppressive to 90% of the world. So there has to be an ending of this world, not Earth, not a devastating genocide of the inhabitants of the earth, but there has to be an end of this way of thinking, of this order of the world, so to speak. It has to, because without that, there won't be a rebirth of a world that's more just. if we're talking about liberation, which has been the theme of this interview, if you watch the interview in its entirety, if we talk about liberation, independence, then we know that we have to have our own self-governance and autonomy, and the world over has to have a renewal of leadership and a renewal of minds in some of these old minds that architect this world. You know, saying it has to be redone. It has to be destroyed. For lack of better words, maybe you might want to substitute the word civilization for something else, but it has to come to an end. The order of this world, the rules of this world, it has to change. Period, point blank. This is even within the Constitution or the framework of this nation says that sometimes it has to be redone. It has to. Let's go.
She always so passionate about stuff.
But but it's hurtful. It's like why and like right now.
Yeah, I don't understand the context of it. I have to hear more. I get it though. I mean, I totally get it. It's complicated.
It's like you can listen to the context of it, but that 2 minutes and 12 seconds is devastating. And it's clear. And it's clear. It's like it's not, you're saying Jesus didn't die on the cross. Jesus came too early to end the civilization of the Jews.
All right, so I mean, let's put it in context. I know coming from a Christian sister, some of this stuff might hurt. I understand from that perspective. But if you look at it, to end civilization, he did come too early. And if you look at the context of what he said when he comes back, he wasn't speaking about him physically. He was speaking about one that would come after him. This is why he gave the description of what will be going on and this and that. He didn't say that this was going to be him personally. So when you understand those contexts and you're really studying those things, then you'll see that wasn't really inflammatory.
There's no context that can explain
I have heard
that.
historical figures say Jesus didn't die on the cross. So they said he died on like a stake because they said the way your hands would be, you'd have to be up here.
But he said he died in front of a Jewish man's store.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, come on. I'm just saying, please, Minister Farrakhan. Like, for the sake of a young love but nicer intervention, just stop. Can you please just lean into what our community needs to do to move forward? Can we not focus on any other external factors and just determine what it would look like if we focus internally on what we really need to go forward? We don't need to have those conversations anymore. I'm done crying, but thank you. I really was trying.
That was crazy.
You know what? I mean, I get that right there. I get what she's saying. And I agree to a high, I agree a lot with what she just now said about focusing on ourselves and instead of external. And my suggestion to anyone who hears this, anyone who watches this video, also subscribe, share it, and all that. Give your comments. Let me know what you feel. But my suggestion would be this. In order to do that, we have to put in the work to change that trajectory. If we feel, and this has to happen every generation. If we feel there are things about the last generation that aren't keeping us on course to where we want to go, then we have to slightly adjust the course. Keeping the framework and the foundation and the blueprint, but building on that. So it's up to us now. Let's us start the conversation, put into action, mold the next generation coming up after us to make sure that we focus on our power of what we can do to change the reality. Because once we do that, kind of like the serenity prayer, when we change what we can change and accept what we can't, when we change what we can change, the things we can't change won't have as much of an influence on us anyway. So I do see what she's saying. So she has to be part of that change, and I believe she will. I also believe that because of the relationships that she has within the Jewish community, which, is a big part of the media, I think because of that, and because she probably has some good Jewish friends, people that, she feels are good people that happen to be Jewish around her, because of that, she may feel like she has to defend to some degree. and because she's affiliated with, you know, the media outlet she's affiliated with. But I believe that she's smart enough to know that that is a short gig. Now let's go ahead and finish this off before I get to why I think that she still will be
a teardrop came out and then went right back in like somebody pressed reverse.
Shut up.
I'm serious.
Why are you such a jerk?
But yeah, you're right. It's just I just don't agree with censorship, because even in that clip, you may not agree with anything that he said, but that reason to be banned.
No, I mean, again, I think that the ban is tricky because if I'm honest, I want to be subjective on the ban. I don't want white supremacy out there because I don't want any more Black people hanged or lynched or dragged behind trucks. But I don't want all of our voices silenced because I can justify, well, I agree with 50% of what he says. But for the other 50% to be traumatized into another culture, I don't think it's worth it.
Well, let's ban ideas. You know what I'm saying? Instead of banning people.
Yeah.
Let's ban ideas.
So you're saying like take down the stuff that's crazy like this.
Yeah, it can be on a case-by-case basis. Like, you know, these are billion-dollar companies.
And they do that already on some posts. Like, can you ban some of the posts? I agree with that.
And if somebody violates too many of these, you know, rules, if somebody violates it too much, then you ban their whole page.
So Alex Jones got warnings. Do we know if Louis Farrakhan got the same warnings?
I'm not sure. I know they took away his verified check on Twitter. And
that verified check is gone. I was just about to say that.
I have a theory about that too, though. I feel like the reason they haven't banned any of these people from Twitter is because of Donald Trump.
I agree with that.
Because they know if they ban these people from Twitter,
they need to ban him.
Everybody was like, well, what about Trump?
Yeah, he lies. It's hate-filled. I felt that's the number one thing I wanted to know. Like, how is Louis Farrakhan banned, but Donald Trump is still being able to tweet and post and lie?
Well, he's banned from Facebook and Instagram.
Donald Trump is not banned from Facebook and Instagram.
I don't think he uses those like that.
But he's not banned from that.
No, he's not banned. And he said he'll be monitoring it closely.
Okay.
But I just think when it comes to liberation, when it comes to things like that, it's about, like, you should have freedom of speech. But Facebook is a privately owned company, so they can really do whatever the fuck they want. Right. So that's why it's all about ownership, baby.
Yeah, Donald Trump is definitely still on Instagram.
Oh. That's why we need our own platforms.
That's
what I take from all of this. We need our own platforms. We need our own networks.
But we also need to be responsible with our words.
Right now.
Yeah.
All right, so let me go ahead and say, you know, saying shout out to Angela. I still think she's cool. She rocks. Listen, we do need our own platform. That's why I say melanatedpeople.net. That's why that link is in the description. That's why I say check out Black Guy Stand Radio. We are trying to take this to a straight independent platform. For now, you can see it on Blog Talk until we revamp the liberationmindedmedia.net and make it to where we can actually go live and port all of the different platforms of Liberation Minded Media, which is My Skin is My Sin, Black Power Radio, Shabaka's Black Experience, The Rundown with Renee, Do the Knowledge Radio, Black Guy Stand, MBK. Hopefully I didn't miss anybody, but, you know, and others who will come forth as part of Liberation Minded Media. Some of our affiliates who are, you know, maybe not so official, but it's a platform for us. But melanatedpeople.net. You know what I'm saying? We definitely need that. So let me explain to you why I still feel, even though, you know, she has her views, and I think her views are accepted by the majority of people, you know, in this country when it comes to politically speaking, as far as, you know, how she feels about Farrakhan. And I think a lot of, especially Jewish people, would agree with her and say, like, hey, you're right, take him off, or hey, that wasn't right, that's offensive. But now let's go back to Mark Lamont Hill. Mark Lamont Hill is a pretty safe dude, good dude. He's not a hateful guy. He did have support for Farrakhan, and later he had to denounce Farrakhan on behalf of CNN. A little bit after that, he went to Palestine and he said some simple things that weren't hateful. All he said is that, to paraphrase, that, Palestinians deserve to be treated like humans. You know, he said some very simple humanist things. He didn't say anything against Jewish people. He just basically said he supports Palestine struggle for freedom. They took him off of CNN and discarded him in media pretty much altogether. So in that same spirit, the reason why I would say that Angela needs to prepare for the same type of thing happening to her is this. Because of the stance that she took, particularly on this interview, because of that opens her up to a broader audience of white people and Black people who aren't hardcore militant or hardcore, push the line like a Farrakhan would. So because that opens her up to a broader audience and makes her possibly more influential and have the potential to grow her message, because of that, if she doesn't cape for whiteism or for the agenda or for the desires of those who control the media and control the voice out there, if she continues to be her authentic self, which I believe is sincerely rooted in activism because of her father and because of her upbringing and her core beliefs and values. So as she continues to pursue those things, it's only going to take one time that she says something or backs someone or something that they feel is a detriment or a threat to white supremacy before they're going to counsel her as a voice. Because they're going to know that she's that much more dangerous. See, if she would have said, yes, all about Farrakhan, yes, 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 that would limit her potential to grow her audience to that core type of constituency. So it wouldn't be as much of a threat, other things that she does regarding her people. But at the end of the day, it doesn't even matter. At the end of the day, sooner or later, they're going to get you out of there because it's only a temporary gig. They don't keep Black voices in mainstream media, especially if they're unapologetic, especially if they're sincerely about their people. They just don't. They will find a way to get rid of you because in this environment now where white nationalism, they're not going to allow these kind of voices. They're going to find a way to get you, whether it's liberal, whether it's conservative, whatever the case may be. It's a temporary gig. They're going to get rid of you, period. And I believe that she's smart enough to know that. She's from the town. She's smart enough to know that. That's why she has her own thing going. She has her own podcast and different things like that. So hopefully she's using this CNN and commentator and all this to get leverage to build her audience so she could port them to her own thing and stay busy in the communities, and that would be the best thing to do. And I'll give you an example of why sometimes it's better just to have your core audience and not worry about trying to attract everybody else. Because if you look at Trump has his core audience. He fuck the rest. He don't care about the rest. He wants those core supporters that believe in his ideals and that will support him as a person. And because of that, he still has strength. Because those who go against him, it don't matter. That's not his base. And he uses them going against him to strengthen his base. So that's a strategy in itself. But I do believe because she has the ability, she's a beautiful sister, red bone, ruin its worth, that's a little bit more appealing sometimes to people outside of our community, and even sometimes, unfortunately, because of colorism to our community. But I'm not, saying disrespectful for that. I'm just saying because of her universal appeal, she's articulate, she's smart, she's educated, she's beautiful, she grinds. You know what I'm saying? She's really about what she's doing. She comes from a background of that, so that means that she has mentors and people that she can confide in for jewels and support. Because she has all that going, you see, white supremacy, if you want to call it that, they don't measure by intention, they measure by ability. They measure by, what's the word I'm looking for? It starts with a C. They measure by what you can do, since the word is blank right now. They don't measure by your attention, they measure by capability. Sorry. So they measure by the capability to determine the threat, not your intentions. That's why anyone's dangerous with a nuclear weapon, even if they haven't ever used a nuclear weapon. So like Iran, for instance. No, we can't let them have nuclear weapons because their capability will be that of which can be detrimental. Even though you can look at their record that they don't start wars and they haven't been warned for thousands of years unless they've been attacked. But they can't allow them to have that capability. So in that same spirit, because her capability is great and she has a lot of potential, and at the core, whether she agrees with certain things or whether I agree with her 100%, at her core, she is about trying to make a better life and a better future for our people. Unfortunately, some of those elements is a detriment to white society if you just want to look at the economics. Us having our own platforms and getting off some of these other platforms and being able to do our own thing, that's still going to cost some people some money somewhere that will see that as a competition that will wish to neutralize that. So you just have to look at it like that. Anyway, this is Jay Dizzle, Nettercat. Let me see if I'm forgetting anything. Jay Dizzle, Nettercat. No disrespect. I put the link if you want to watch the whole show. I put the link in there. So if you want to listen to the whole interview, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Like I said, the reason why I'm doing it on this channel is because I'm trying to build up this channel to get, thousands of subscribers like my other channel, because my other channel comes under attack so much that I figure I just start from scratch. So make sure you subscribe to this. Make sure you share this. If you do want to check out the Nettercat channel, all you got to do is put Nettercat in there. You'll find it. All you got to do is put Black Guy Stand in the search engine anywhere. You can find anything Black Guy Stand related, anything Liberation Minded Media, anything Jay Dizzle. And I hope you do that. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you took something out of it. Hopefully it doesn't seem offensive to Angela if you see this, because there's a chance that I might be able to network with you. Like I said, my family knows your family. It is what it is. Seattle up, West up, town business. I'm out.